How are you feeling, Chaz?
I'm feeling nervous.
Why are you nervous?
My parents and my grandparents would always say that we were Naga. We've always been Naga, and that's all I've known, that I'm Naga.
Tell us, growing up, what sparked your interest in genealogy?
So I think I was about 4 the first time my dad ever told us the story about Amos, and I wanted to see if there was any truth to that.
Discovering like your ancestry and your own history gives you a little bit of a sense of belonging of, oh, I'm descended from these people and they were known for this. Oh, it kind of like inspires you to then be like, try to find that within your own self.
My name's Leah Caniff. What else do you want to know about me? I'm from Cedar Springs, Michigan, which is a tiny little town north of Grand Rapids. So I took the DNA test because I wanted to know my exact ancestry. I was always told that I was a bit of everything. I mean, there were definitely specifics, but I was curious. So I got an account with just the basic like ancestry.com. And I decided to see what that had to offer. I spent some time digging through the sites, digging through the articles and the paperwork, and I found something. I found Amos's naturalization paperwork. Finding his paperwork was incredible. I cried because on it listed his birth town, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but as a 4-year-old, and my father told me that we could have family in Italy, my goal from that moment on was to go to Italy and find my long-lost relatives, and we'd be reunited, and it'd be this wonderful thing. Yeah, in this whirlwind of events, the tickets were booked, and in like 2 months I was going to go to Italy and visit Amos's hometown.
Here we go. Ag sample will not be processed. Huh. Do you really have to record this? There we go. So I was born in Nagaland, India, which is a small state in India. So the reason I want to take a DNA test is because there's a lack of history or information about my ancestry, and actually, in fact, the ancestry of like everyone from where I'm from. Honestly, I think this test, I don't think it'll change the way I look at myself or change the way I do things, just because like I've lived all this time like not knowing. It has never bothered me, and I'll continue living the rest of my life having this fact not really bother me.
There's Ancestry.com, 23andMe. They've got genetic testing for dogs. There's even a company that analyzes your DNA and matches you with wines selected for your unique palate.
Hi, my name is Sue Veldman, and I am from St. Joseph, Michigan.
Hi, I am Daryl Veldman, and yes, living here in St. Joe. I was born in Chicago. There's a heavy Dutch community there. You go to the Dutch school, you go to the Dutch church, and you go to the Dutch college, and it's just what you did. So you take a lot of pride in the fact that you are 100% Dutch.
What instigated us to do the DNA test was we were sitting around with our friends, and our one friend was really interested in learning about her DNA makeup. And we're like, oh, that would be fun.
I think the results were really interesting for everybody. I mean, including us, including myself.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I was just expecting just in the Holland, the Netherlands
Right.
region, but my results were so surprising. I had a lot of English. In order is British and Irish, 36%. Very surprising. United Kingdom.
You have a bigger forehead than I do.
I have a bigger forehead. I also have, yes. Then I go to 29% broadly Northwestern European. From there, go to Scandinavian, Denmark, 20%. And then French and German, i.e. Netherlands, 13%, which
See,
just
you're more Dutch than me.
it blew me away that was such a small percentage.
So after taking this test, if someone asked you like what you are, what would you say?
You want to go first? Go ahead.
I would say I am Northwestern European.
I think I would still say I'm Dutch because truly, I mean, going back to the generations closest to me,
Right.
they grew up in the Netherlands. It's hard to say that, the Netherlands. And so I think that that's probably the greatest influence on who I am today. My DNA, yes, definitely comes from different regions. But the whole nature versus nurture kind of thing, I think is Dutch. I mean, we grew up Dutch, we meat and potatoes. I mean, it's Dutch. That's what I would say.
So you're driving through Tuscany, which is beautiful, and then we arrive in Lucca, which is this very famous town. It's beautiful. And then we start going in the mountains, and I'm just like getting jittery and excited. We're following the river up through these mountains. And I didn't expect to be emotional. I mean, this was gonna be a cool trip, and I was excited to know, but I wasn't expecting to get emotional. And the friend that I'm driving with just goes, imagine your great-grandfather was traveling here, 100 years ago, and I lost it. Of course, I'm in the car, and I was like, how am I gonna do this? What if I don't find anything? All of a sudden, the trees open up, and you're in this tiny little town in the mountains. It's Bagni di Lucca. It's beautiful. There's streets on either side of the river, and then the river cuts right through it. So we're driving up, and we find it's essentially a government building, but it's the town hall. And we go inside, and I'm just in awe of this beautiful building. So we go in this little back room, and it's essentially the Secretary of State. There's government officials in there, and there's a woman working the front desk. And I just stood there as my friend in Italian explained what we were doing here, what we were hoping to find. And I'm just like praying that this woman can help us. But she's was like, oh yeah, we can do that. We have records back to the 1850s. Tell us his birth year and we'll find it. So she goes in the back and she comes out with this big, beautiful old book. And it was the record of every birth in 1886. And this woman, she's flipping through the book and she doesn't find anything. And I'm starting to get very disappointed at this point. We've been there probably 20 minutes, and it dawned upon me that I could come here and find nothing. That this story would end here.
I'm gonna go to the site. Okay. Ready? I'm gonna view my results. Oh, okay.
What do you see?
So wow. It says that I'm 78.3% Chinese.
How does that make you feel?
It's interesting. I think it's very different than what I thought.
Who are you excited to share the results with?
No one? No, I'm kidding. No. I don't know. I guess I can talk, I'm not sure if it'll be shocking because I haven't told my parents that I'm taking this DNA test. And I think in their mind, they've never had to think about something like this before. And I guess I'm the first person in my extended family that's done a test like this, So it's going to be very interesting for me to tell my parents about what I found.
I'm Jay from everywhere by the reason is.
I'm a real man of the world.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you.
So would you like to travel to all of these places?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A little thing from Peru. I think this is like a travel trinket thing, but it's like an old version. Like now they have nicer versions. Hi, my name is Treya Coombs. So I was adopted in Peru when I was like 1. My parents worked there as missionaries for 17 years with the mountain people, the Quechuas. Their Quechuas are descendants from the Incas. As a little kid, I learned that the Incas, they had these runners that would run like from one path to the next, and they were kind of like post people. They would take a message and run really far through the mountains. When I was a little kid, I thought I was descended from them because I love to run. I know that I'm Peruvian and Quechua, so I think having those determined definitely helped me like still feel grounded in a sense. Ethnicity wise, I'd say I'm Latino. Culture wise, I guess I'm out of everything mostly American, but I also like know the Asian culture really well, and I know the Hispanic culture really well too. And so that's why culture wise I'm a third culture kid, which is what we call it overseas, where you are from one culture but you live in another culture, but then you're also exposed to other cultures at the same time. So you have like 3 cultures in there.
So at this point, I had obviously given up, but the woman was like, you know what, let's keep going, let's keep trying. It can't hurt. And I was like, well, you're right, I did travel to Italy for this. It can't hurt. I'm already here. And I'm standing there and I'm writing out this Caesar name, and I just give up. I'm like, I don't know what this is. And my friend is like, how is this guy related to you again? What are we doing here? So I was like, okay, I'll draw you a family tree. So I start drawing it out. I'm like, Amos was born, and then he had a daughter. Her name was Nina. And then I put her full name because I was like, oh yeah, she goes by Cicera. And then I'm like, and then she had my dad, and then she had me. And I'm like writing these names out and drawing them. And she looks at the name under Amos's, and she's like, who's that? What's that? It's like, that's my grandmother. That was Nina, And she's like, no, what do you have written? And I was like, oh, it's Cicera. It's her actual name, but whatever. And she's like, no, that's an Italian name. And it just like, I could see the light bulb click in her head, and she goes, it's a common tradition in Italy for a son to name his daughter after his mother. And I was like, you're telling me that Cesira was not only his daughter, but his mother, and that's the name on this paper. Okay, and I start, getting back into this. Well, all of a sudden, she finds information on Cherubino. There was a marriage certificate of this Cherubino Giannini marrying a Cesira Bunnani, which is the Cesira name we saw in this document, and the last name started with a B, even we could tell, and it just clicked. This was Amos's parents. So everything else is going on, and I barely paid attention. And one of the workers has been making copies, and as she goes, she's like stamping them and signing them. Finally, I think I have like 4 or 5 papers at this point, and she goes, okay, I have more questions for you. I was like, what could you possibly ask me right now? She goes, I need to know certain dates. What year was Cesira II born? I'm like, well, I have that right here. Let me pull it up real quick, because this is all on my phone. And she was born in 1918. She's like, okay, what year did Amos apply for citizenship? And I was like, oh, I have that right here, 1925. And she's like, okay, so that means when Cesira was born, she was technically an Italian citizen. After 1915, Italy made a law that no Italian immigrants' children could claim Italian citizenship. She goes, so what year was it that your father was born? And she goes, the law ended in 1948. And I go, my father was born in 56. She goes, okay, that means that the law was demolished by that point, meaning that your father could have applied for Italian citizenship because his birth year didn't fall between the years of 1918 and 1948. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, I never could have imagined. And she goes, which means that you could apply for Italian citizenship. And I was amazed. And she's like, I made all of these documents for you. They're official documents. Your next step is to take these to Zero2's birth certificate, your father's birth certificate, and your birth certificate to the embassy, and you can get dual citizenship.
So I think people in general like to categorize things, and from that they like to organize, they like to see the world in more organized sense.
I think DNA testing is super cool. I think it tells the story of how you're wired a little bit. It's like the wiring part, which is the nature part. I don't think it defines people though, completely. You're wired this way, but there's the nurture part of it, and that's how you were raised, and the values and the character of your family.
I don't think I regret doing this at all. Actually, like, you know what? I'm really happy that I did, because I guess, like, some people say that ignorance is a bliss, but in the end of the day, like, I've already established, I have a culture established, I have a family established, I have, like, you know, ancestors in this area that I've been brought up in a particular way.
The DNA test gave me very little information. It just confirmed one of the family stories. But what this trip gave me that the DNA test didn't was so much more. I have never been so happy or overwhelmed, or I was just able to experience all of these incredible emotions because it meant so much to me. It meant so much for me and for my family. And nothing has changed since the DNA test. My family still has those same traditions. My father still says capiche. All of those things are still the same. And what going to Italy is it confirmed that portion of our identity for us.